Welcome back to From Middle Class to Millions. I have notes today because we're going to be talking about numbers. And this is such a juicy story because this is about a family friend. And I really want you to pay attention to how this family friend was feeling, what they were thinking. I want you to see if you can relate to her in any way, shape, or form. But I really want to dive into this because what I'm going to talk to you today, let's call my family friend Tina, okay? I want you to know that I'm going to show you, as you're listening to this, how much money you're losing right now while you sit here or drive to wherever you're driving or doing whatever you're doing, because you are probably doing exactly what Tina did, okay? Tina was following me for years, like almost since the very beginning of my business. But the past 3 years, she said she locked in. She was reading all of my emails on Monday morning at 6 o'clock with her coffee. She was listening to my podcast on her commute to work. And she was scrolling through my social media feed and posts late at night, obviously, because she couldn't sleep, because you know why? Because she was worried about her money, like most of America. And last month, she finally said, all right, enough is enough. I'm going to reach out to you. And I'm going to reach out to you because I want to talk to you about this. I've been meaning to do it for a long time, and I just thought it was never the right time. So let me give you some details about Tina, and then I'm going to get into the weeds so that you really get a sense of what's been going on here. And like I said, this episode's about numbers. It's about fees. It's about how you can maximize on what you're doing with your money and how important it is to pay attention. All right. So here's the thing. Tina's about 46 years old, or she just turned 47, somewhere around there. Don't get caught up in those numbers. And she makes good money. I mean, she's smart, she's successful, but she hasn't been doing anything with her finances. And that's pretty common with people who make good money. Sometimes the income is what they're focusing on. And when there isn't a need at the moment to look at your money because everything is kind of moving along smoothly, I get it. And, at 46, 47, she had a lot of other things going on. But I want you to know that when we sat down together and looked at her numbers, we looked at what her financial advisor had been doing with her portfolio. And I want to point out that Tina's portfolio is $415,000. And what we discovered when we looked at her portfolio was enough to make me puke. I'm not going to lie. We uncovered that over 10 years, due to fees, she was on track to lose about $140,000. Over 20 years, that number would jump up to $500,000. And over 30 years, that would be over $1.3 million. $1.3 million gone to fees, not market crashes, not bad investments, to fees. And what really got me, which is what is most important to me when I'm talking about money and I'm talking about people's future, is when we translate that money into time, into the actual years of her life, it sounded even worse, because those fees were going to cost Tina an extra 8 to 12 years of work, clocking in, commuting, dealing with bosses, dealing with clients, dealing with managers, dealing with employees. Another 8 to 12 years simply because she was paying these fees. These are years that she could have been retired, like out of there, free, done. Or years when she could have at least had the mental space to decide whether or not she wanted to continue working. Just like an average of a decade just lost. So this is what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about why smart people like Tina avoid looking at their money, what we found when we finally looked. I gave you some of the highlights there. And I'm going to give you some of the math that is going to make you feel sick to your stomach and hopefully drives you to go look at your statements. And the most important thing is I want to go through when it is wise to pay for an advisor, when it's actually worth it, versus when it's financial suicide. Because I myself have used an advisor, and I'm going to tell you the exact scenarios when you should pay for an advisor and a fee-based advisor. All right, let's get into it. All right. So I told you about Tina. I told you that it's been years that, of course, I've known her for a very long time, but at least for the past 3 years, she told me when she came to me that she's been paying attention to what I've been doing. She is not bad with her money, but she says she's not doing anything with it really. And she had entrusted everything in the hands of a financial advisor because life, man. I mean, let's be honest. Somebody in Tina's position, and I know her situation, but I know a lot of you can relate to this. You know, she has a demanding career. She has kids. Kids are expensive. Kids keep you busy. Kids have extracurricular activities. Her parents, she helps supporting them in various ways, not only a little bit financially, but also emotionally. And she's there for them to do and take care of them as well. Yeah. And she also has a social life and she wants to live a full life and continue living a full life. So time feels limited and it feels scarce. And then sometimes you just don't have the energy. Okay. Especially when it comes to having the energy to dedicate to other things like a new skill that you feel a little uneasy about, that seems overwhelming, that seems difficult. You know, it becomes this thing, like money becomes this heavy thing that's sitting in the background. And if it's not a calamity, you're right. If your house isn't on fire, then even though it's not relaxed and calm either and quiet, because that's why she's up at night thinking about it and worrying about it, it's that thing that's nagging in the background. So you don't entirely avoid it, but you just don't look too closely at it, right? You don't want to pay too much attention to it. Now, I know that after doing this for some time, the things that Tina mentioned to me, the reasons why she hadn't, come to me sooner, the reasons why people kind of avoid their money, it's very common. Like you can go onto any like threads or message boards or Reddit or look at the comments in Instagram, on Instagram or TikTok. People will give you all of the reasons, and they're true and valid, for why they haven't decided to start working with someone and looking at their money, right? Some of them, I've heard people say to me, I'm afraid of what I'll find. I've heard, I don't even know where to start. I make good money, so I guess I'll be okay. So there's a real tie between income and not feeling the pressure. Some folks are like, I don't even want to open Pandora's box. Like if I start looking at what's going on, I feel like I'm going to have to give up the life that I'm living. Then there's the time issue, right? A lot of people tell me that they'll deal with it when work slows down, when the kids get a little older, when things aren't as busy, all of the reasons why they can't give it their full attention. And then there are folks who say I have an advisor, so they're taking care of it. Like, hopefully that's enough. And that's the one I'm going to focus on today with Tina, because she has an advisor. And I think many of you who have advisors believe that, okay, this is somebody who's going to take care of it for me. And really, the advisor gives you the permission to not have to think about it, not have to engage, not have to worry about it. But we know that that's not the case, because Tina has had this advisor, and yet still she is concerned. It is still nagging her in the back of her mind. And I want to be clear. I'm not here to rag on financial advisors. I believe, like I said at the very beginning, there are times when you should work with a financial advisor, and I'm going to outline those times. And there are times when I have worked with a financial advisor, and I believe that it makes sense at times. So it's not like I'm blaming the Tinas of the world for using a financial advisor. I just want you to know when is the best time for you to use one, so that you are aware of what's going on with your money. So now that Tina has decided that, okay, I want to talk to you about it. And let me add this too. Tina was very clear to me. She's like, I didn't even know that there were people who did what you did. She was like, I thought there were two options, which she was, she goes, you give your money to a financial advisor, or you just keep doing what you're doing. Even if what you're doing is A, nothing, B, is steeped in confusion, C, is like cross your fingers and hope for the best. Like, she didn't even know that folks like me existed that could help her with all of the elements of personal finance, with her cash flow, with her budgeting, with her debt payoff strategy, all of those things in addition to her investing. So she thought that, hey, the only thing I could do was hand over my money, my investments to an advisor and kind of figure out the rest of it. And that figuring out of the rest of it meant just hopefully making more money, increasing her income. You know what I mean? And I think that's pretty common. I think it's pretty common. And that's why I'm sharing this, because I know that there's somebody else out there who's hearing this and feels really overwhelmed and not confident about what to do and feels like they're the only ones. And no, that's why I'm sharing Tina's story, because Tina is smart. She's resourceful. She's done really well in her career. This is the missing link, and she couldn't figure it out. So knowing that there's somebody out there who could help you with the whole picture made a difference for her. And that was half of the battle. So, okay, let me walk you through Tina's real numbers, because I think it's important to hear real numbers, things that aren't extreme or unrealistic. And I think for my audience and the folks that listen to me and work with me, these numbers are going to feel pretty real to you. So I'm going to start with what Tina brought to me and what was under the purview of her financial advisor. So Tina, like I said, had $415,000 in her investments. And we calculated, to be conservative, that on average, she'd have a gross market return of 7%. That's very conservative. We know that the market has given an average of anywhere from 10 plus percent. And so 7% is very, very conservative. And we looked at this $415,000 over 10 years. Assuming she didn't make any more contributions, where would she end up? Now, I want you to realize this is going to be the same person with the same market, same discipline. The only difference between these two numbers is going to be the fees charged by the financial advisor. So the one portfolio of the $415,000 has a high fee of 2.19%. Now, for some of you, that doesn't sound crazy. It doesn't sound high, like 2%. Okay, whatever. But we're going to also look at another portfolio that has a low fee, same $415,000 of 0.17%. And that's assuming that Tina's going to take care of this portfolio on her own. All right. After working with me, after getting the education, after becoming financially literate. So after 10 years, the high fee portfolio, the one with the 2.19%, will be almost $664,000. Not bad. But the low fee portfolio will grow to about $800,000+. So that's a difference of almost $140,000. So right there, right off the bat, when Tina came to me and we looked at this alone, she'd saved herself $140,000. Right? So I want to bring that up because when people say, okay, they want to work with me and they're like, wow, that's a big investment. It's like, yeah, because in the first month you've saved $140,000. I've more than enabled you to get a return on your investment, right? More so than ever before. But that's just in the investment realm. Obviously, when you're working with me, we're not only looking at your investments, but that's just one piece of it. So this is how I want people to start thinking like an investor and not thinking about, oh, I'm spending X amount of dollars to work with Shannon. No, I'm saving myself X amount of dollars because I worked with Shannon. All right. So again, $140,000 saved from fees alone. Not because of a market risk, not because there was bad timing, not because she was being frivolous or anything like that. All of that money disappeared because of fees. Okay? In 10 years, $140,000. Now think about it. Nobody would willingly give up $140,000 just like that. right? You're not going to walk over to an advisor and just hand them $140,000. But when you're paying 2% in fees, yeah, that's what you're doing over the 10-year period. Now, I want to extrapolate this out by 20 years and then 30 years. And I want to do that because I want to offend your senses when I do this. Because this is the math that people don't pay attention to. This is the math that really matters. When folks say they're not good at math, you don't have to be. You need to understand the difference between when you're paying fees over 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years and what that amounts to. You'll get these numbers whether you're good at math or not. So listen, let's look at, again, 20 years out. Nothing's changed. She hasn't added any more money to that original $415,000. After 20 years, the financial advisor's 2.19% high fee portfolio will have $1.06 million. Not bloody bad, right? You haven't contributed anything more to the $415,000, and now 20 years later you have 1.06. Not bad at all. But the low fee portfolio, that was the 0.17, that's going to have $1.56 million in it. That's a difference of $494,000. That's almost $500,000. Nothing else was done. Like nothing. No extra effort, no extra risk. It was just compounding over 20 years. Almost $500,000 in fees alone. So let's go out to 30 years. Right? Now, imagine Tina 30 years from now she's 76. 20 years, she would have been 66, 67. Now she's 76, 77, right? The high fee portfolio, the one that is being managed by the financial advisor at 2.19%, she would have $1.7 million in there. Again, not bad. Compounding is just fantastic. And remember, we're using a conservative rate of return of 7%. Very conservative. So these numbers could even be higher than this. But the low fee portfolio, the one that was 0.17% in fees, that would be at $3 million in 30 years. Do you see the difference? That's a difference of $1.3 million. That's not chump change. That's not chump change, folks. That's not a little drag on your investments. $1.3 million, that's like a whole second retirement, right? Think about it. You would have lost $1.3 million in fees. What does that translate into? That's the difference between college funds, investment properties, generational wealth, better vacations, more vacations. I mean, that is a completely different lifestyle, a completely different way of having options. But what's most important to me, I don't only look at, okay, yeah, you would have thrown away, just chucked off $1.3 million. But to me, I like to translate that money into time. Okay? I like to look at that as time. So let's say we have two people who are starting with this $415,000. Well, the low fee person, right, gets to that 1.56 million in 20 years. Okay, they don't use the advisor, they have low fees. Within 20 years, they get to 1.56 million. To reach that same number, when you have the advisor, when you're paying those high fees, will take you 28 years. Those fees cost you an extra 8 years of work. 8 more years of commuting. 8 more years of dealing with bosses and managers and employees and clients that you may not want to deal with. 8 more years of work when you may want to pivot or do something different. 8 more years before you can make a different choice. 8 more years where you have reduced your options. And when it comes to 30 years, well, then it just gets nasty. Because to hit that 3.01 million in 30 years as the low fee investor, the high fee investor needs to work 42 years to hit that 3.01 million. What? 12 extra years? Because you're paying fees? Not months. Not 12 extra quarters. 12 extra years. You got one life. One. It's precious. You're going to throw 12 years away? This is why I say this isn't a math problem. It's not. It's not a math problem at all. Fees are a result of a life that there wasn't a plan. That you just kept your head down and you did your thing, but you didn't have a plan, you didn't have a strategy, you weren't clear about what you were doing. It's just really poor design or lack thereof. Because when you have the financial literacy and a plan, you would never throw away that much time. You would never throw away that much money. You would never do that to yourself. Having a plan will enable you to save yourself, especially in Tina's situation, 8 years or 12 years, depending on the horizon. That doesn't make any sense. Nobody would intentionally do that. But when you're not looking at your money, when you're not making a decision to get started, you are throwing away your time and your money, particularly when you have it wrapped up in these high fees. Again, I am not shooting down financial advisors. It would be hypocritical of me to do so because I have used one. All right. But I believe that there are times when you should use a financial advisor and you shouldn't walk into a financial advisor's purview or space without being able to have the language to speak to them intelligently. This is the thing. A lot of you are working with these financial advisors whom you never see, never hear from, maybe once a year. You get a statement. You don't know what it means. You don't know what's going on. You don't know what you're invested in. You don't know why. And you're paying these fees. And literally throwing away years of your life and throwing away your money. So I know that a financial advisor can be absolutely worth their fee and they should be paid for their fee, but in these circumstances. I think if you need a financial advisor who can prevent you from panic selling, who can stop you from thinking, oh, I've got to time the market, or who can talk you off the ledge when things get chaotic in the market, when you don't believe you'll be able to ride the storm, well then, yeah, I guess they can be worth the fee. I do believe you can manage your mind around these types of circumstances. But if you don't believe that you can, if you don't believe it's possible, and that one bad decision can cost you more than 2% in a single year, then yes, for your own behavioral protection, I would say get a financial advisor. The second reason why I would get a financial advisor, and I've used them for these reasons, the complexity of your portfolio and your situation, your financial situation, and your tax strategy. Okay? If they are fully abreast of the ever-changing tax codes and how to enable you to be a legal tax avoider, then yes, I would say use a financial advisor. If you have RSUs, like restricted stock units, stock options, business income, cross-border issues, if you need to figure out the smartest way to start withdrawing your money, because you're at that point now, and how to do that in a particular sequence, a financial advisor definitely would come into play. And you can get one where it's fee-based. It's not a percentage of all of your assets under management. So it doesn't matter how much you have in your portfolio, you're paying one flat rate. And the other reason why I think an advisor would be worth it is if you just decide you want a certain level of peace. Because some people can manage their money and some people don't want to. They simply don't want to. And then there's some people who absolutely shouldn't because they won't. And if that means that you're paying for that peace, then yeah, do so because you're paying for what you value. And I believe that money is a tool. But ultimately, I truly believe, for me in my personal circumstance, that as a tax strategist, that's why I would go to a financial advisor. That's why I go to a financial advisor. I've had all those, unique situations with my portfolio. And so, when you own real estate and you own various things, various businesses, cross-border real estate and property and all sorts of things, it becomes really complicated. And I just like to have a second pair of eyes. And to me, I pay for that service and I value that service, but I can also walk in there and have conversations with the financial advisor and know when I walk out of there exactly what happened. I'm not confused. I'm not in the dark. If somebody asks me to explain it to them, I can. Okay. So that kind of leads me to when the fees are not worth it. All right. And I'm going to give you Tina's example again. When you're in a basic set it and forget it portfolio that's rebalanced maybe once or twice a year, when you're getting reports, which you don't read nor do you understand, and then you're paying 1% to 2% or more in fees. I mean, that was Tina's case. She checked all of those boxes. That's work that she can learn and be replicated and be transparent, and it can be done automatically. And really, you're not paying for the convenience any longer, because that's the case. She was paying for convenience, but that cost was costing her so much in terms of time and money. Another reason why I don't believe financial advisor is worth it, if you are getting zero education from the financial advisor. Many of you have come to me, you've been working with an advisor for years, you don't understand anything about what you own, why you own it, why you're paying what you're paying. You can't explain your strategy to me in plain English. You don't know what's going on. There's no value add there. You're just a dependent, and you're blindly paying over time for a service that you don't even understand yourself. And most of you are too smart to feel settled with knowing that you're doing that. And then the third reason that I think, if you're paying fees and they're not worth it, is when you're just in this trust me stage. Right? When you ask about the fees and they're like, oh, there really aren't fees, they're minimized, and all explanations are really vague, and you're told not to worry about it, and everything gets really fuzzy. If you're paying for fees in that kind of situation, you should get out of there. Honestly. Because anyone who's minimizing the fees either doesn't understand compounding, which I highly doubt, but they either don't understand compounding or they understand it perfectly and they're banking on the fact that you don't. Because if you did understand it perfectly, you would see this differential in the 10 years of $140,000, or in the 20 years of almost $500,000, or in the 30 years of $1 million plus. You would see that you're losing 8 years of your life when you're paying fees for 20 years. You would see that you're losing 12 additional years of your life when you're paying fees for 30 years. If you understood it, you would say, that doesn't make sense to me. Why would I continue doing this? But what do you do with this knowledge? It's all great to say, okay, Shannon, you know what? I don't want to pay the extra fees. I don't want to be duped out of $500,000, $1 million, 8 years working extra more than I need to, or 12 years working more than I need to. But what do I do? Well, that's when you get the help that you need so you can transition. You're not going to become an expert. That is not the goal. You are not going to suddenly have to know every single thing about the market and investing. You need to learn enough so that you will understand what your money is doing. Just like you learned enough to do whatever it is that you do to earn money, you should know enough so that you can keep your money and get it to grow. Advisors are not the enemy. As I said, there are many opportunities where it makes sense for you to use an advisor, and they should earn their fee. I do believe that. But you should also be clear about what you're paying for and why you're paying for it. And many of you don't know. Many of you don't know. And I don't want to put you to put your head in the sand after hearing this. I want this to shake you up. Because you know what? You don't need a crisis to start looking at your money. You don't need more time. You don't need the perfect time. You don't need any of that because you're not going to become an expert. You simply need to say to yourself, look, I'm an adult. I know that I want to be able to sleep well at night. I don't want this to be nagging in the back of my mind constantly. I want to take care of this. But I need help. And I need help because I need to streamline this process. I need to do it quickly. And I need to have enough financial literacy and clarity to ensure that I know, okay, where are there leaks? What do I want to stay? What needs to go? And I want to be able to make enough informed and educated decisions that prevent me from messing up my future. That's what you want. I hear it when you guys come to me and you tell me that. I know that's what you want. It isn't solely about the money. It isn't solely about the time. It's about having options and feeling secure and safe. So don't put this off any longer. I know we're in February. I know some of you had New Year's resolutions where you said, okay, I'm going to look at my money this year. But think about it. Tina's been talking about this or thinking about this for 3 years. When we look at 10 years, and that was $140,000. If we just do some really simple math, okay, and let's say everything we could divvy up evenly, she's lost $42,000 in the past 3 years. Because remember, in 10 years, she would have paid $140,000 in fees. Okay? So if we take that $140,000 and we divide it by 10, we know it's $14,000. 3 years times 14 is $42,000. Sitting there thinking about it, wondering, waiting, perseverating, cost her $42,000. That's an investment that she made. $42,000 worth of lack of clarity, confusion, and worry. Don't do it to yourself. Don't do it to yourself. That alone is 7 times more than the fee that I charge. 7 times. So when you're thinking, I don't have the money, you're right, because you're paying it in fees. You're paying it in fees right now. And you could stop that immediately so that that fee money will be reinvested in your money. That's the key. That's all that you need to know. All right, folks. I'm going to leave the link in the show notes for you to book a call with me. Get on the phone with me. Let's talk about what's going on right now with your money. It is so important for you to not put this off any longer. I know you guys have big goals and big dreams and big ideas, and you want a full life. And in order to create that full life, sometimes money is needed. So let's talk about it. Book a call with me. I'm looking forward to seeing you, and I guess we'll talk next week. Take care.